Delight Your Marriage, episode 11.
Welcome to the Delight Your Marriage podcast, the show where you hear from amazing and inspiring wives sharing their struggles, triumphs, and advice for this journey called marriage. Here's your host, Belah Rose.
Hey there, it's Belah. I hope all is going well with you. I just want to imagine what you're doing right now. Maybe you're walking the dog, or you're at the gym, or maybe you're doing some things around your house or in the car. I mean, I just wish I could see what was going on in your heart, in your life right now. But I'm hoping that this will be the next 30 to 40 minutes, just an opportunity for you to relax, enjoy, get caught up in someone else's story and how they look at life and what does it mean to have intimacy in your marriage. And that's what this podcast is all about, to really encourage and inspire you to live wholeheartedly in your marriage and, really to the glory of God. So today I've got to treat Carrie once again. So this is part 2. This is the second half of her awesome interview. You can find the first one at delightyourmarriage.com/10 because that's in episode 10. But she just shares so openly and honestly and bravely with us, the areas of intimacy that she struggled with and areas that she's really found some amazing keys to help with. And I just appreciate that because she recognizes that you have to be specific. You've got to be clear about what you're talking about. Otherwise, it's not really going to help anyone. So I really appreciate Carrie for doing that. And so without further ado, here's the interview. Carrie, thank you so much for sharing that really challenging struggle that you all had. But I'm interested in telling us about a wonderful time that you had in your marriage.
Can't call it a wonderful time, but we actually, shortly after we started our website, because the nature of some of the topics that we covered, we had some people publicly put us down, I'll say, speak negatively about what we were doing. And it came like totally we were blindsided. We didn't see that coming, and it was done in a public way. But I understand that, for some Christians, especially an older generation, this was like, they weren't comfortable with what we were doing. But it, in a public way, to say, that we were doing something very wrong. And I'm not going to share too many details about it, but it was a really tough, stormy time in our lives. And surprisingly, what helped us get through that storm was the fact that our marriage was so strong. And so here, our website about marriage was being attacked, but our marriage was what helped us get through that time. And it's so actually, us doing the website has, you might find this for yourself too, as you're working with Delight Your Marriage. If you start focusing on that, even by writing things or having conversations, there's you yourself start to benefit more than even people that might read or listen. So that happened to us.
I completely agree with that so far already.
Yeah.
That's true.
So it's I think I've heard before, the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so that applies here with, God's design for marriage, whether it's sexual intimacy or emotional or, the other areas of marriage. And so, that's almost like a really good tip is if we all started websites about marriage, then we'd all benefit, right, for ourselves. But so I know I can't call that a wonderful time, but Jim and I, when we think back to that, we don't have negative pangs or it was difficult, but we just we held each other. We were there was nothing. like we comforted each other at that time that was so hard, when we felt like so exposed in a negative way. And
Yes.
because it was people, that love us and are close to us, that were not approving what we did. So that was really painful. But our own relationship, we were like, it was almost like when your relationship is good, like you could take on the world. It may not be fun, but you just give strength and comfort to each other. That's so special.
Yes. I just love that. And I think that's an amazing insight also for our listeners of, if you're in a struggle, if you're in the stormy season, or if, if the vulnerability that you really need to be with your husband is a challenge right now, ultimately a good marriage is worth it. It's worth it.
It is. Yes, and invest in it however you can, and it'll pay off. Yeah.
Yes, that's incredible. Yes. And I'd love to hear what you think, if you can, dub it down to kind of 3 things that you would say, these are the central things to our marital success. What would you say they were?
Okay. When we it's easy for us to actually define. One thing is, we've tried to have weekly date nights. And that has been challenging at times, like when there's a newborn. But we've gotten so good at carrying car seats into a restaurant, and I've always been a breastfeeding mom, and so get good at doing that in public places, nice and discreetly. And but it was like we didn't necessarily let that hold us back from having our date nights, and so it was something that there was a marriage seminar at our church, and we had been married, I think, 5 years, and we already had 2 children. So we listened to this couple share about marriage, and they challenged everybody for doing a weekly date night. And so all these couples that are there were nodding our heads, yes, that's a good idea. And I don't know if anybody that was there has continued doing that except for Jim and I. And it's been great, because date night doesn't mean just go to a movie and share popcorn. That'll be sometimes what we do, but it's also sometimes just going to have a coffee together, just alone, and where we may talk about our goals, it's beginning of January, and that's kind of what we're focusing on right now. What do we want 2015 to look like for us? Or do we have any priorities we want to make sure happen? And so talking about some things that are it's about us and our relationship. It's not just about when we were younger, we got the babysitter and we went out and spent some money at a restaurant. It was being more intentional. So that's one thing.
I just want to mention what you said. So weekly date nights for our listeners. This is Carrie who's speaking, who's got 9 kids. She works at the church. She runs a website. She's written books and resources. And yet she makes sure that every single week, since she had only 2 kids at home, she made sure that this is a priority. And that is a key. So ladies, take that. If she can do it, you can figure it out. Make that date night. That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay, Carrie, go ahead to the second one.
Okay, the one that I talked about, I actually alluded to before, was his needs, her needs, and especially for me to recognize Jim's needs. And so the whole sexual intimacy and the value and the importance of it in our marriage. And I know that, we could say that, Jim, that's probably his number one need. My number one need is feeling cherished. That'd be pretty simply. But I would not ever say that I don't need sex, because I do. Because somehow, I realize that men really connect emotionally through physical intimacy, but it's amazing how after it's love making. It's not just, physical orgasm happening here. but there's such a emotional closeness that I'm feeling as well. So when it's his needs, her needs, I think for a lot of us women that don't really, we don't think sex is the first thing that we need, but we do still need it more than we think we do. But anyways, his needs, her needs, like if I can just call it that, it's kind of was a light bulb time for me to understand the value of sexual intimacy. And I think that a third thing, which I just mentioned before, was us doing the website. Like, it really has helped us to keep our marriage a priority, because we're writing and thinking about marriage topics. So I think those are three pretty important ones that impacted our marriage.
Yeah. And I would say to the listeners, if God's not calling you to start a website on intimacy or on marriage, that's okay. The point is, I think, is
right.
really to prioritize marriage and to recognize the import that it has in your life, and that it deserves you taking some extra time to learn about maybe some of destructive habits that you've been doing to your husband, or vice versa, or it's worth the investment in your time and your focus, because look at what a wonderful future you could have with your husband, with you said 24 kids now, total. Is that what it was, Carrie?
Yeah, if I include Jim and I and all of our kids and like the whole group, like when we get together for Christmas Eve, it was 24.
Yeah. Oh, that's just incredible. Yeah. That's just incredible. And, I know that it's a beautiful vision of a possible future for you and your husband. I'm speaking to Let Your Marriage listeners of that could be something along those lines, getting together for New Year's Eve. I know I come from a divorced family, and so that will never happen. We won't ever all get together for a family occasion like that. And you can give that gift to your kids. You can invest now, take the time, go through that hurt and process that you need to get on the other side and make an incredible future for yourselves.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, so even if it's not a website, like you just said, investing in learning. Like Jim and I never want to feel, and we don't feel as though we've arrived. There's always and that 5 love languages, that was really key also. And it's so I think Gary Chapman, he actually did a bit of a Canadian tour of speaking, and we made sure that we were able to attend one of his sessions not too far from where we live. But I've read the book, but it's still, no, let's go hear it again, or we're starting to get a little library in our home of marriage books, so reading ourselves, keep investing, keep learning. So I really liked how you mentioned that about always keep learning together.
I love that. After 32 years of marriage, it's incredible. Still learning. I love it. And I think it's a habit. It's obviously something you all have done from the get-go, where, one of the first books you mentioned. So that's a lifestyle choice. And I think that's amazing. So I'd love to ask, we've talked about intimacy a lot so far, but I'm interested in if you could share a tip that wives can even implement maybe today or tonight in their intimacy that would be helpful.
Well, I was thinking about this, and something that I don't know what made me, no one told me to do this, but pretty much from when I first got married, I pretty much always go to bed naked. It's just it's not the only time I might wear something is I do have some sexy lingerie, and so and that's a real treat for my husband, because they're so men are so visual, aroused that way. But so I'm sure there'll be times if I went to the hospital to have a baby. Well, then I'd wear something there for sure. But basically, it's, and I don't know, it's just, like, I don't even think about it now, but it's like we get into bed and immediately it's skin to skin. It's not, I don't have to, it's not, because it happens all the time, I'm not thinking, oh, but if I do, he's going to think that that's an invitation to have sex and I'm too tired tonight, or, like it's not, it's just, you know what, I just love being close. We like cuddling.
Yeah.
And so it's, I don't know, like maybe then getting past that feeling or the hurdle of, well, yeah, nakedness and that we're going to have sex, and like it's almost like you begrudge it a bit. But no, it's like, you know what, there's still a physical intimacy when you don't have sex, but because it's skin to skin, like, and he gets to still enjoy your body, and you can feel really close to him, and no, I'm speaking from a way, like, I realize some women they're totally opposite. They easily get aroused. They've got a high sex drive, and their husband maybe doesn't. Jim and I aren't in that kind of situation. We're the opposite. He's the one with the higher sex drive. But that's an easy tip that somebody could start tonight. Yes, you don't even have to shop for it.
Right, and it's free. And
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Not a whole lot of prep you have to do.
No.
Carrie, I'm interested. Something that's been helpful in my marriage, I would say my marriage is similar to yours, where, my husband really, it's a high priority need for him.
Yeah.
I mean, the highest, more than likely.
Yeah.
And something that's helped me is to really have a sense of how frequently is ideal for him. And, it would be multiple times a day, actually, but
I know.
because I'm not quite so, I don't have that much energy in me, especially waking up with a newborn. But something that helps me is to think about, okay, a couple of times a week would be a really good, I would feel success in that area of our marriage if we kind of did a couple of times a week. Is that something that's helpful for you, or how do you kind of gauge it?
I think if someone has asked me this before, and the answer I gave was probably have sex. What's ideal is a bit more than what you're doing right now. So I know for Jim and I, it kind of, ebbs and, goes up and down a bit. But there was a long time, I'd say even within the past year, where it seemed like morning sex happened every day. And then sometimes, to be honest, I was not always having orgasm myself. Like, it wasn't mutual, but I was totally fine with that. And, and Jim would always ask and offer, but it's, but then, there are times like battling some illness or whatever. Actually, I didn't bring it up at all, but 3.5 years ago, I had a ruptured brain aneurysm, and that's pretty serious. And so, thankfully, God, He kept me, spared my life. I was unconscious, and I ended up having an 8-hour brain surgery. But God, He was so, took care of me, and I've never had to have one single appointment of therapy of any kind. My speech was fine. I knew everybody. My personality didn't change. I could walk, talk, move, everything. I did have to stay in the hospital for 3 weeks because they really monitor you, because I was at risk of having a stroke. But it was just, I did not know I had an aneurysm, which most people who have them don't know they have it. But it just ruptured, and I passed out, and thankfully Jim was there, and so I was taken care of at the hospital. But the recovery from that, first of all, 3 weeks in the hospital, and it was just something I thought about a lot when I was home, because I actually went through a period of time of some depression and anxiety. And that is, like, I'd never experienced anything like that before. I had panic attacks, and we realized it was probably triggered by my lack of sleep, because I was having insomnia really badly. And so I remember thinking, like, it's sort of expected, 3 weeks in the hospital, come home, and all right, you know what, we should have sex the day I come home. But, like, that wasn't happening. I wasn't feeling strong enough, or, like, I had a large incision in my head, and, like, kind of be careful. And but it was, I knew enough that it was still important. And so sometimes even improvising, if I can use that word, but it's, I don't know, like, if it was too difficult to maybe have, intercourse, then, bringing Jim to orgasm using my hands. And I'm still, venturing in other areas. But I still knew that it was important. And I don't know how I got onto this topic here, so I'm sorry if I've got us off on a rabbit trail, but it's
it's wonderful.
I know eventually over time we picked up and started having sex more often, and it was we talked about it for sure, because it wasn't like Jim had to keep thinking, well, I don't dare initiate anything, but Carrie's not initiating, and so are we ever going to have sex again? Or, like, it wasn't like that. I said, we should try, or, like, what do you think we can do? Or, I think if we just talk about it, so that he's not thinking that I don't care. I did. Yeah. I just physically, or even, like, emotionally at that time when I had that depression and anxiety, it was challenging, but so at least that you're doing whatever you can to try, and so that you don't have long times. Like, I feel so sad for how many couples pretty much have non-existent sex life. Because it's such something that makes you feel close, and when it's, both the husband and wife giving to that relationship, not a taking, but it's giving.
Yeah. And it sounds like...
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it sounds like even in the kind of recognizing that, yes, it's something that you need as well, but it's something that your husband really, it's a higher priority for him. So
yeah.
Even you're keeping that in mind is to kind of, would you say he might set the pace in terms of frequency, or not that he's always the one that is initiating, but in terms of how frequent it happens, it's probably because of his need that,
yes. Yeah, I would say so. It's very easy for me to turn him on, if I can say it. So I'm not even trying to, and it happens. But it's almost as though I'd say in our relationship now, he probably initiates more than I do. There are some times when, believe it or not, he doesn't want it. But I can tell it's because he's actually feeling a bit depressed, or he doesn't have, thankfully he doesn't really battle depression, but there might be, just there's stuff weighing on him, or he's got something he's really worrying about. And I just know that it's amazing how his life looks brighter for him after we've had sex. And so I know that I'll push through and press through, and I can eventually change his mind, and he decides, I think I do want to have sex after all.
Wonderful.
We laugh about that. Then I get to say, yes, I was the victor. I conquered. It's a lot of fun, actually.
Yes. Yes.
So,
that's too funny.
but he probably does. Yeah, we wouldn't be having sex as often if it weren't for a lot of his wanting it and asking, and well, he's not always asking. Well, he asks non-verbally.
Sure.
So, yeah,
yes.
just starts making moves.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to pull that out a little bit because I think as a wise wife, you recognize that import and not necessarily and then you are even initiating. It's not that you're just, okay, well, I'll just relent and go ahead and let him, No, you're actually taking an active role in making sure his needs are met, which I just love.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Sorry. Go for it.
Well, and knowing that, like, okay, I wouldn't, my top need is being cherished or affirmed. That's affirmation is pretty important for me, and quality time would be like, I like that, but I recognize that yes, sex is a need, even if it's not always a want. It's a need. Like, I may not want sex right now, but there are some of those times I need it just because I'm for our marriage. And like, I need sex because of how it just makes us so close, and we're so, like, we just bond in such a great way. But,
yes, I love that. And I think sometimes when women maybe hear a message like this, they might get it construed in their mind that, okay, I need to just serve him in this way. And that's the whole point. I just have to. And sometimes, it is a service. Sometimes that is part of, we serve each other,
For sure.
But I would even say for my experience a lot is that, when I commit to the experience in my mind, that, when like you, I'm a planner. So when I'm like, okay, we've got some time now, this is a good when I commit it in my mind, all of a sudden that starts changing gears in my body. But it's not until my mind gets there first. And so I've got to kind of maybe put it on my schedule or just really have a mental note that this is what's happening. And the other thing that's helpful for me also is initiating, actually, because it sounds like I'm also like you with when I initiate, I am fully present and engaged. Almost a lot quicker than if he's initiating. Sometimes it takes me a while to wind down from my day or whatever else is on my mind. Yeah, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think that is, for me, it's not thinking that, that sex is his thing. No, it's ours. So it's not, so that's when the initiating is, it's for us. It's not just, I'm doing this for him, or, I'm just serving him. Yeah, it's like you said, marriage is very much about serving one another.
Yeah.
It's sort of like this fine line of how we, our attitude or our thinking about it. And it can make a difference for, how things work. For sure.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful. And even like you said, you might not even realize that you need sex. And then after the experience, it's a whole new world.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
When you feel so connected, when you feel in love, and it's something amazing that God designed to make sure that marriages are solid. This experience is significant. It's just amazing.
And it's because it's only between a husband and a wife. Like, I may have, some great friendships out there, but nothing in comparison to how Jim and I, like we're each other's best friends, we're each other's lovers. we take care. Like, I feel so cared for by him, and he feels the same about, like, he appreciates so much that I'm being intentional about our sexual relationship, and yeah, it's for us. Using the word, it's not for him, it's for us.
I love that. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up to the thoughtful takeaways, I'm interested in due to the specific marriage that you've had, and you've hit on these a bit, but I wondered if you had another answer. What opportunities have you had to really serve God through your marriage?
Yeah. I think I've had the privilege to mentor some young women, and it's like, especially when it's about private things, like, with their own sexuality, or especially preparing for marriage, or young married women, and then for couples who are struggling. Like, we've done the pre-marriage classes, and we've taught marriage courses. Like that, it's just really an honor, because it's, whether your marriage is going really well or if it is struggling, it's still something that feels private, and so it's, and we're not, like, unfortunately, there's some situations that were sad, and, like, it's not as though we're able to just fix it at all, but we just want to, before marriages, and try to come alongside and encourage as much as we can. So that's been, kind of close to home, and, my husband being pastor of the church, and we had, if he's performing marriages, and he won't do that unless the couple takes pre-marriage class. And so it's really great to be able to just sort of let some of it overflow from our own lives, but, while we're teaching a course on it. And I'd say also that our website, we're honored that it has blessed people. It's, we started this as a hobby. We didn't think that it would reach a lot of people, but it's for us being able to not spend very much time on it. We are so happy with the influence that it's had, and it's not just among Christian men and women, but it's even just general public. We've had somebody contact us from, I think it was Indonesia, a Muslim woman, and she says, "I like some of your information. Would you be okay if I translated some of it?"
Oh,
and
my goodness.
Last I heard, she was still working on that, and so we're glad to share it. But we won't even know what exactly the influence has been, but when we initially started, there was one couple that contacted us and said, "We think that your website has saved our marriage." And it was like we talked earlier about, what they did was they just used articles as a platform for discussion, because they weren't talking. And now they started talking about the issues, and so I'm glad that they're happily married right now, and that was back 7 years ago. And so it was like, we didn't have any grand ideas of what would happen, and we still don't, but I feel like God has been able to use the resources that we've put together, and if it can save marriages, that's awesome. And if it can help good marriages get better, that's awesome.
That's right. That's right. And
yeah,
that's incredible. And you don't even know the ripple effect of how many marriages, maybe that one couple, that they've been able to affect. And it's just incredible what God has done.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, can I ask you if there's specifically either a book or program or resource that you can recommend with either wives that are struggling in the same ways that you have, or
Sure.
that kind of
I really enjoyed Shannon Etheridge's book, The Sexually Confident Wife, and it's easy read, and it talks about some things like that give us the wrong thinking, and addresses that. But it's really practical, and some of it is like, can make you laugh or whatever. But it's I really appreciate Shannon's the vision she has for helping women, and so that's the sexually confident wife. And it's been quite a while since I read it now. I think I read it when it was first published, but I'm partway through Sheila Ray Gregoire's book, The Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex, and the subtitle, "And You Thought Bad Girls Have All the Fun." So again, she's a really great communicator. But again, sometimes it's the wrong thinking about our body or wrong thinking about sex, or so that was a good one. And I've just started a new one. I wouldn't know how to pronounce it. It's the word sex, but spelled backwards, or XES. And why Christian girls so often get it backwards. And so I've just started that one. Then on a non-sex topic, there was a book called The Surrendered Wife by Laura Doyle. And it just was, it challenged me because, like, as I said, I'm quite administrative. I like making lists and organizing stuff and taking control. I have to be careful I don't become a control freak. But when it comes to my husband, he doesn't really need me to be his mother and, to take care of everything. And like, he's an adult himself, but he can. So I recognized when I read that book that there's probably some areas where I'm kind of overstepping. So the one challenging, and it's still tough for me sometimes, is when he's driving, whether it's, I think he's speeding, or whether it's, he's pulling into a parking lot and I'm telling him, oh, you can park over there, or, he's got eyes, he could probably figure out where to park. And so some of it wasn't, when I talked to him about it, it wasn't as though he said, yeah, like, that really bothers me every time you do that. He was being very gracious, but I knew for myself, I need to just think the best of him and just trust him. So there was that. I just remember that book kind of challenged me in a few things. Just, it was very practical. Sure. So there are so many great resources out there. And I can highlight that we have some on our website.
Yes.
That even ebooks that we've written. So I can put a plug in for that. But
please.
Yeah. So
are there any ebooks that you've written that you'd like to specifically highlight for our listeners that would be helpful for them?
Well, it seems to be our signature and most popular ebook sold is the 7-Day Sex Challenge. And we kind of call it's an in-home marriage course. It's just between husband and wife. But it does talk about having sex for 7 days in a row. But it's more than that, because it's like, I remember when Jim and I first did the 7-Day Sex Challenge ourselves, before we made it public, we incorporated a part of it where you actually say a form of your wedding vows to each other every day. Like you're doing it by, like, it's not a long script, but when you hold each other's hands and you look in your spouse's eyes and you say those words, it's like, I got emotional. Like, it really moved me. And so there's some things of like, and doing that every day is like for 7 days, and then tying in with having sex. Now there was other parts to it, but it was like that week we felt so close, and it's almost like a great thing to do every once in a while. Like,
Yeah.
It can't
Yeah.
hurt. It doesn't hurt, that's for sure. So, but anyways, it's so it's, I know the title is rather provocative, but it is a challenge because of 7 days in a row to have sex. That takes time, but that it really has positive results. Like it doesn't necessarily mean, oh yeah, now our sex is better than ever before. It's not about that. It was more about just intimacy happening on every level.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And the last, before we wrap up, I would just love to ask, maybe even in a sentence, if you can,
Sure.
What would be, if you sat yourself down in year 1 of your marriage, what would be one piece of advice that you could give you?
Okay, so I did think about this a little bit, and I think I would like to tell wives, regard your husband as your prince in shining armor, regardless of whether you think he deserves that title or not. I just, again, I think it's our wrong thinking sometimes can impact what we think about our husband, and that starts to flow out in just how we interact. And so if we're thinking less of him, we don't even expect much. It's amazing how often that's all we'll get. It's not as much. But so I don't know, just it sort of brought me back to the verse I read from Proverbs 19, I think, about overlooking an offense. And so it's like, yeah, even just thinking so the best about your husband. He's your prince in shining armor. That's what I think about Jim. He's like, I just love him to bits. So he's so special.
That's so incredible. 32 years of marriage, and that's what she has to say about her husband. So that's that's a great sign. Well, I mean, I could just go on and talk to you all day, and I wish I could. And so I want to.
It's fun.
It really is. So can I ask you before we say goodbye, would you be willing to share how our audience can connect to you, find you, social media, however ways?
Okay. Our website is theintimatecouple.com, and we do Twitter and we do Facebook. And we have on our website, I think there's a contact form. If anybody ever says, like, I was looking for something specific, and do you have this on your website? Or, we do have a search bar on our website that if you're thinking, you know what, I just want to find any of their articles or the questions, we've done some question and answer pages there as well, talking specifically about a certain topic, then, use that search tool and see what comes up. And it's a great place to start if you're looking for something specific.
Wonderful. Well, Carrie, I just cannot thank you enough just for being so open and sharing your heart and your wisdom. Okay. It's just been incredible. Really. Thank you so much for all of this.
Yes. Yeah. And so you really kind words there. I am just an ordinary person, though. Like, don't think of me as a sex goddess or anything like that. But, and like I said, we're not sex therapists, but I do feel like, I don't know, between my husband and I, we have made a great team in our marriage. And so that's where the wisdom is actually coming from both of us. Whatever I shared today, I think. So thank you, Belah, for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to some of the other guests that you're going to be having on your Delight Your Marriage podcast.
Wow, Carrie, thank you so much. It was just such a pleasure to hear from you and hear from your heart and your experience. I feel like I could listen to Carrie all day long. I don't know if you're anything like me, but she just has so much wisdom and yet so much humility in the midst of that. And I'm really grateful that she was willing to share so openly about her marriage, and so that we could all learn and grow and become better. And I love that it's so clear that they really take care of each other in their marriage. I mean, it sounds like she really honors what's most important to her husband, and he does the same for her. And she said at the end how much she feels taken care of and cherished. I just love that. So what a beautiful picture of marriage. Definitely check out her resources that she mentioned. That's all going to be linked up at delightyourmarriage.com/11. You can go there. All the books are linked there. All of her website, the materials that she mentioned. Further, I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, well, first off, I just want to thank everyone that has reviewed the podcast on iTunes. You mean the world to me, really. I read each one of those reviews, and it so encourages me, and I really appreciate that you do that, because it helps other people find the podcast easier. So if you haven't done that yet, I would really appreciate it. You also have the opportunity, if you do it before next week, you have the opportunity to be entered into a drawing to win a free Delight Your Husband course. If you go to delightyourmarriage.com/review, I have all the specifics on how to review it so you can be entered into the drawing. So please go there. I am so grateful that you joined me today. Thank you so much, and you mean a lot to me, and I just pray for you and your marriage and your family, and that God would be so present in your lives the rest of this week. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you've been blessed by this, why not share it? Until next time, live with love, wisdom, and passion.